Hi, everyone. I'm Matthew DeSantis.
And I'm Kaylie Shapiro.
And welcome to the road to the Belmont Stakes
at Saratoga.
Welcome, everyone, to this early Belmont Stakes preview with myself and my NYRA Bets colleague, Kaylie Shapiro. We are excited to be heading up to Saratoga in just a couple of weeks for the historic Belmont Stakes Racing Festival taking place up there. But before we get into the probable runners, who's going to come, who's not going to come, talking to Kaylie about some of these things, want to remind you to press that like button and subscribe on NYRA Bets YouTube today. Subscribing is entirely free of cost, just notifies you when new videos drop on the channel, whether those are race previews, full card analyses, handicapping and betting tutorials, so much more. We got you covered for the Belmont Stakes. We got you covered for Saratoga. We got you covered for the Breeders' Cup. We got you covered all day, every day. That's the bottom line here at NYRA Bets. All right, Kaylie, it's about that time. It's not time to go up to Saratoga for the full summer. But we're going to go up to Saratoga for a little bit. Pretty excited.
Yeah, I'm so excited. I know, obviously, I can't wait for Belmont Park to open. Obviously, it's going to be great when the Belmont returns to Belmont Park. But I will say it's such a treat. I mean, in the meantime, to have the Belmont Stakes at Saratoga last year, the energy on the track was like nothing I've ever seen before. Saratoga's always amazing, but that weekend was just so fun that I can't wait to feel that energy again up there.
It was absolutely electric last year. It was so electric, I stayed outside of the race course. That's how I said, I can't deal with all these people. It was absolutely packed, crowded, wall to wall. I mean, people were so excited. So many people who have never had an opportunity maybe to go to New York. You know, there were a lot of people from Vermont, Massachusetts, things like that, who were coming over because it's closer to go to Saratoga than down to the city. And it was so cool to see so many people come to Saratoga last year and make that pilgrimage. We hope to see everybody back again this year, obviously. And it's shaping up to be quite a race because of what we just saw last weekend at the Preakness when journalism put on a show and reminded everybody he's either 1A or 1B in terms of the top horse in this 3-year-old crop. And there's going to be a big showdown. And that's really all you can ask for. Maybe people would hope the Triple Crown's on the line, but we got the Derby winner, we got the Preakness winner, and we got the Derby third-place finisher all facing off here at Belmont.
Yeah, obviously it would have been great if a Triple Crown was on the line, but even if, all these horses like Journalism and Sovereignty ran both of them in all 3 legs, it wouldn't nearly be a guarantee that we would. I was saying to you the other day that, because we were talking about Sovereignty and Journalism, who's better, which we don't really know yet. We just saw them both put on, run 2 really amazing races in the Derby and the Preakness. But when you think about it, I think that these horses are just happen to be like 2 really special, talented horses that happen to be in the same crop. So I think that's what makes this even more exciting. And obviously, Baeza coming out is going to be great. 3rd-place finisher. And, that horse is clearly going to improve even more, you'd imagine now. But yeah, I'm really excited.
Yeah, very much. And so let's dive in and talk about the probable field. And right now we have a probable field of 7. Now we do have a few horses that we'll talk about on the next slide that are going to be pointed somewhere else, and maybe some possibilities, some dark horses to potentially come into this race as well. But listen, first off, we got to say it's at 1.25 miles. All right. I know everybody's, obviously a lot of hardcore fans know that. The Belmont Stakes traditionally is the test of champions at 1.5 miles at Big Sandy. We know that. But when we moved it up to Saratoga for the renovation and the rebuild of Belmont Park, the race got shortened to 1.25 miles. Why? Because otherwise we'd be starting the race on the far turn. And that would present logistical challenges. And that would also, honestly, really bias people based upon post position, which would be entirely random. So there's drawbacks to that too. So you go, keep it at 1.5 miles. Well, there's problems with keeping it 1.25 miles. So it's 1.25 miles. You want to put an asterisk next to it, knock yourself out. Bottom line is it's going to be a phenomenal race, and we can't wait till it gets back to 1.5 miles, like you said, at Belmont Park. We can't wait for that to happen back here in the city. But as of right now, Michael McCarthy and the connections, journalism's already shipped up to Saratoga. He's already on the premises. He's up there. He's making his presence felt. Sovereignty's been up there for the last couple of weeks for Belmont and actually just recorded a workout on Saturday going 49 and change over 4 furlongs. Baeza for John Sheriffs is back on the work tab out in California, but he is intent to come out here to see if he can do what his half-brother did last year, Dornoch, and win the Belmont Stakes. You have Hill Road coming off that Peter Pan victory. I know you were very impressed by him, Kaylie. Heart of Honor, who's already come over from that UAE Derby, ran in the Preakness, is going to stick around. Rodriguez, a little bit of an X factor, as well as Gosger. When you take a look at this field, you mentioned journalism and sovereignty already, but it really stands out as being, I think, an outstanding field with great depth and a lot of quality runners.
Absolutely. And I mean, obviously, when you look at this list, I see closer, Heart of Honor, mid-pack, and then 2 speed horses. So I'm really hoping that, obviously that we get to see Rodriguez and Gosger. I think there's going to be pace, probably regardless of if hopefully another horse goes, or maybe Bob sends another one, or, there's a couple of other speed horses that are kind of big question marks right now. Hopefully some of those show up to ensure pace. But I mean, who stands out? Definitely the top 2 on this list. But I will say Hill Road is a horse that I was so impressed by in the Peter Pan. He really reminds me of Sierra Leone from a physical perspective, and obviously his running style as well. But something about that horse, I mean, he hasn't gotten much pace in a lot of his starts, and he's obviously came over from Europe, so he's just finding his footing over here. And I think that if he ships up there and is training up there, I mean, I think this horse honestly is a bit of a wild card. I think if he gets pace and he stays on his correct lead as well, who knows what can happen. But this horse really impressed me in the Peter Pan, and as well as a physical perspective. Taking a look at him after the race as well reminds me a lot of Sierra Leone. So
that's very interesting you say that. Obviously, Sierra Leone was a big-time runner last year for Chad Brown, ended up winning the Breeders' Cup Classic. And as you mentioned, Hill Road started his career at Leopardstown, at Curragh, over in Ireland, running on the turf, and then came over here and made that North American debut in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, finished third that day at a huge odds, 61-1. And then obviously has come back this year. And it's important to point out that Peter Pan, he ran third in the Tampa Bay Derby, which was his first race in 2025 off the bench. He was supposed to run in the Wood Memorial, spiked to fever. Chad Brown talked about how the ownership group was very patient. They weren't going to rush this horse into another spot. And they said, listen, let's just shoot for the Peter Pan and let's make this horse more of a Belmont horse. And you said it. He really took a big step forward, earned a 94 Beyer speed figure, tracked down McAfee and Captain Cook in that race in the home stretch, did it on the wrong lead, which you alluded to. And certainly could take another step forward because he would be third back in the form cycle, essentially. And so, there's still maybe more upward potential for this horse, who is still very lightly raced and certainly has a good pedigree from a standpoint of quality, rode up top, and you have some good influence underneath as well. So Hill Road, interesting horse as well. But you mentioned pace. This is going to be the big question, right? I mean, Rodriguez, it holds the dubious distinction at this point of being pre-scratched out of the Derby and being pre-scratched out of the Preakness because of this lingering foot issue. Now, Bob seems to indicate that the foot's cleared up. He's working better. He looks good. He could be lone speed in this race if nobody else comes in, because Gosger, he's a horse that tired a little bit late and got tracked down by journalism in that Preakness. He was obviously tracking the pace of Clever again, but I don't know if Gosger is a horse that necessarily wants to get into a speed duel with Rodriguez up front, and is probably more content to sit just off Rodriguez as opposed to really challenging him. That said, journalism and Baeza certainly have more tactical speed than sometimes they've shown in some of their previous races.
Yeah, definitely. I think Gosger, is a bit of an unknown. He's a lightly raced horse. I definitely think that horse showed, a ton of talent and potential, although he got a really nice trip in the Preakness. I don't think that horse was stopping. I don't think anyone was going to catch that horse besides journalism. So that's the thing. And it was journalism who caught that horse. It wasn't anyone else in there. It wasn't Sandman. So when you think about it, this horse might have a lot of talent. And although it probably would be smart for him to track right off of Rodriguez, if they both show up in the Belmont, that might make Rodriguez have to go just a little bit faster and could ensure, at least a decent pace and an honest pace here. And it's a bit of an unknown who else is going to show up, obviously. But yeah, these two are looking like your best shot at the pace. And if both of them show up, it should be pretty honest. It should be,
but there is an interesting dynamic, which is when you look over the last 12 years. I go back to
Mhm.
2013, and if you go to NYRA Bets, you'll see some trend line data going back to 2013 in terms of betting, in terms of favorites winning, etc. Why do I pick 2013? Well, that was the year that started the road to the Kentucky Derby, the prep point system.
Mhm.
And I always use that as a starting point because that kind of influenced not only who got to the Derby, but then who ended up being pointed to the Preakness, who ended up being pointed to the Belmont, just because it influenced everything else. So I
Mhm.
use that as kind of a starting point. What is interesting is obviously the race was being run at a mile and a half, and
Mhm.
being run at a mile and a quarter is very different. We only have one data point on that last year from Dornoch. But what's interesting is that historically, front end speed does not do very well at the Belmont Stakes. Last year, though, we saw Dornoch go up front. He got challenged briefly by Mindframe in the stretch, but battled
Mhm.
back and basically took him gate to wire.
Mhm.
And so the possibility of going gate to wire, I think, is much more possible at a mile and a quarter as opposed to the mile and a half that it had been, which tended over the last 12 years to favor horses tracking within 3 lengths, kind of or 5 lengths, I should say, of the early pace at the
Mhm.
half mile mark. So, it'll be interesting to see, again, how everybody draws. That's going to be a big deal,
Mhm.
just to see who draws outside of whom, sort of a thing. And
Mhm.
then the point that you and I have made before, which is journalism wants to be a lot closer. He wasn't allowed to get as close in the Derby. You could tell Umberto Rispoli wanted him to be up a little closer. American Promise kind of shut him off from being a little bit closer
Mhm.
in the Preakness. Baeza also has very good early speed as well, and probably could
Mhm.
sit that kind of second, third position if nobody else wants to go with Rodriguez. So, journalism and Baeza, I don't think will give themselves too much to do if this
Mhm.
is the way the pace scenario plays out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, they're going to know going in if there's a
Yeah.
horse that's going to be lone speed or what the scenario could be. But when you think about it, I think the pace matters like less and less when you think about the 2 horses that we know are hungry and get the job done. And I mean,
Yeah.
you watch the Preakness 20 times, even though you know the result, it really looks like journalism is forget, the trouble
Yeah.
in the ride and forget all of that. If that's a normal horse race and Gosger is that far ahead, it really looks every time that you watch the race like journalism is not meant to catch that horse whatsoever and
No.
that he can't. And he did. So I think that in the Belmont, even if there's not a lot of pace signed on, I think obviously you have 2 horses that I mean, I don't think that it could help them, but I don't think that it's going
Yeah.
to matter that much because of who we're talking about that's going to come from behind.
Well, let's talk about one of those horses, and I'm shocked we haven't really gotten him yet. Obviously, the Kentucky Derby winner, Sovereignty. We got to talk about it because Belmont opts to skip the Preakness, go to the
Mhm.
Belmont Stakes instead, give this horse a little bit of time off in between those. So he's going to be fresh. He's going to be
Mhm.
running on a regular cycle, 5 weeks off between the Derby and the Belmont. He went right by journalism in that Kentucky Derby, and there was no doubt who was better that day. Now it was over a wet track, and maybe you go, well, maybe that changes some things. Maybe one of those horses likes a wet track a little bit more than the other, though. They both handled it fantastically, and they both came from off the pace that day. Sovereignty, listen, he's going to come from the back of the pack. I think that's his biggest knock at this point. Him and Hill Road are going to be making the biggest runs from the back, but it's a shorter field, and if there's not as much pace, then it starts to get compressed, and a horse like Sovereignty isn't going to be 10 or 12 lengths back. He's going to be 7 or 8 lengths back. And
Mhm.
so that doesn't give Junior Alvarado quite as much work to do coming for home.
Yeah, definitely. And when we did that Preakness reaction, I was playing like a lot of devil's advocate with like who could be the better horse, journalism or Sovereignty. I mean,
Yeah.
the more that I've sat on it and watched the replays, in my opinion, and I could again eat my words, and obviously journalism, like I said, I think it's really a chance that we have these 2 special horses in the same crop. I don't think stuff like this happens like every single year,
No.
but I think, in my opinion, I think Sovereignty is better based on what we've seen so far. Like you said, Sovereignty went by journalism very easily in the Derby, and it's almost as if journalism looked like done when he saw that horse go by him, which obviously he was like the horse was
Yeah.
going to win. But I mean, I think it was pretty close with him getting second in terms of Baeza
Yeah.
coming up, because that horse kind of, I'm not saying that he looked defeated when Sovereignty went by, but I mean, Sovereignty.
Well, it was I also think it was a little bit of a matter of Rispoli, I think, felt defeated a little bit, because you even saw that was why Baeza almost caught journalism at the end, because Rispoli's literally pulling journalism up as they get to the wire. Like, he's easing the horse because he knows he's beat. He knows he's not getting to Sovereignty at all. So he's kind of saving some in the tank maybe and just going, hey, we don't have to go all out to the wire. And then Baeza starts running up like hell to almost get, second and almost. Yeah. But yeah, like the Sovereignty, great closer.
Yeah, and they had the plan, obviously, of running journalism in the I thought from the beginning that this was the horse that they thought had Triple Crown potential, and it could be very well true. I do believe maybe they left a little bit in the tank when they saw Sovereignty go by, but there's really no way of Sovereignty put him away. Like,
yeah, he did.
So in my opinion, I think Sovereignty is the better of the two. And I think that horse, Belmont worked him on Preakness Day. He's just sitting there and he's getting ready to fight, is my opinion. And I think that we're going to see a really crazy race with these two in there. And when you think about it, journalism had, if I remember correctly, like no trouble in the Derby like he did in the Preakness.
Very little.
Sovereignty, he had to come to on the outside of journalism. Rispoli was a bit indecisive about, whether he was going to go to the outside or if he was going to try to fit. I don't think that they would have hesitated for a second with Sovereignty. They would have known that he would have got the job done, even going to the outside of those horses. That's just my opinion based on what we've seen so far. So I think that horse has a bit more positives in that way that I don't think that he needs. Journalism doesn't either based on what we saw, but I'm just saying Sovereignty in the Derby, when those two nose and nose, Sovereignty put them away. So that definitely sticks out in my head going into the Belmont.
Absolutely. And listen, like I said, it's a shorter field this time. There shouldn't be as many issues of traffic and problems like that. Although that said, we obviously, saw journalism get into some trouble in a 5-horse field in the Santa Anita Derby. So, you can find trouble in all sorts of races. And, we've seen that in other short, Richie Migliori always says in short fields, that's when favorites sometimes face the biggest problems because everybody knows where they are and tries to intentionally box them in. I remember Good Cheer had a really tough ride in a 4-horse race in the Rachel Alexandra because they tried to keep her boxed in, things like that. So, that's the trouble when you have such a good horse that comes from off the pace is the other jockeys can be a little bit more tactical and go, you're not getting through this hole. I'm not going to give up the rail. I'm going to make you go 5-6 wide. And I'm going to make you kind of go around me, and I'm not going to let you get to your preferred spot. But Baeza, we also have to talk about this horse. Obviously, the half-sibling to 2023 Kentucky Derby winner Mage and 2024 Belmont Stakes winner Dornoch, an incredible pedigree with Puka, obviously being that legendary broodmare. And listen, like I said, he came running up for third and nearly got second in the Kentucky Derby. And very similar to Sovereignty, he went back out to, his home base in California. He's been rested. He's going to come east again. We know he can ship. He did it before. And he's another one kind of like Hill Road, still lightly raced in the grand scheme of things and could have more potential.
Yeah, definitely a little bit of upset potential just because he is so lately raced and obviously was a late last minute entry sort of into the Derby.
Yeah,
but
that's right.
I, just based on what we've seen, I believe the race is going to go journalism or Sovereignty, leaning obviously towards Sovereignty. I think that we could see an improvement from Baeza. I think journalism and Sovereignty are better horses.
It's going to be interesting to see because one of the things that's fascinating is that historically, looking at the last 12 years, when you look at post-time favorites, how have they done? Post-time favorites have won about 42% of the races over the last 5 years, 5 out of 12. They've hit the board 10 out of 12 times. So the post-time favorites are remarkably consistent. What's fascinating is how poorly the second and third choices have done relative to their odds. The third choice has never won over that stretch of time. And the second choice has only won twice and only hit the board 5 times. So it's really interesting to see. This year does feel like a bit of an anomaly in that you do have these 2 horses that are outstanding, kind of that really stand out. You have a horse like Baeza, who I think is, improving certainly and should run a good race. You have a horse like Rodriguez, who's probably going to be 4th choice. Then you have a horse like Gosger and Hill Road who will probably compete for 5th choice, things like that. But even though it's a short field, it's a deep field. And, Gosger's got upside potential. And listen, Heart of Honor ran 5th in the Preakness. And I'm not saying a Heart of Honor is going to win, but this is going to be a much more natural spot for him in terms of second start in North America. He's gotten through the quarantine process. He's going to be a little bit more familiar with how things are. He's going to be a little bit more, because remember, he hadn't run since that UAE Derby. And so now he's going to be a little bit more fit, a little bit more in shape. The connections are going to understand with this, what's going to happen. He's already up in Saratoga too. So again, he ran 5th, which was, maybe he just ran in a straight line, but the bottom line is he finished 5th. And maybe he can improve a little bit off of that effort. I'm not saying you include him in your supers, but I'm just saying it wouldn't be a shock, especially he's a horse that seems to always give him trouble out of the gate. So if he gets away, maybe a little bit better. Maybe there's some upset potential. But, Jamie Osborne didn't take D. Wayne Lucas's advice to say stay home. He came. And so he's coming for another leg too.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was so cool that he came and, his daughter rode. Such a cool story. I mean, that was definitely fun to watch. I mean, he's not heavy on my radar for the Belmont, but I do definitely see obviously the potential of improvement, of course. But yeah, definitely. I think we talked a lot about, the top 2, Journalism and Sovereignty. It's pretty unanimous. There's no really arguing that those are the top 2 horses coming into the race, no matter who you think is better. The race kind of goes through those 2. And then if we're talking from the horses here about upset potential, I mean, if there's no other speed signed on and Rodriguez doesn't end up going, Gosger, that's the upset potential. And that horse has the pedigree to run all day. So
I agree.
Yeah,
I agree. So
he's pretty interesting. I mean, definitely a horse I'm not leaving out of tries and supers, even exactas. I mean, he's,
well, he was your winning. Yeah, he was your winning exacta in the Preakness. And so, listen, you got to streak up. You've already hit the exacta in the first 2 legs of the Triple Crown. You better no pressure, Kaylie, but you better pick it again.
I know. Watch now. It's going to be horrible in the third. No, I'm just kidding. I genuinely believe. I believe in Sovereignty. I think Journalism is such an amazing horse. I mean, I was like crying watching that race, the replay over and over again. That horse was hungry for it, and what better? I mean, you have 2 amazing horses showing up, and hopefully we have some other ones that step up. Like we talked about Hill Road. I really like him. Excited to see him in the Belmont. I mean, do I think he's as strong of a closer as the other 2? No, but we haven't seen him get much pace either. So it's going to be interesting.
And one of the things I will say about Journalism, listen, he's coming back on 3 weeks rest. He's the only horse here that's been running that full Triple Crown schedule of 5 races in 3 weeks. And he had to be fully exerted to win that Preakness. That is the one thing I will say. They didn't leave anything. Umberto wasn't pulling him up at the wire in that race. So, listen, he's a big horse. He's a strong horse. And so he's a horse that you figure can bounce back. Michael McCarthy made the point that as a 2-year-old, he ran 3 races in 7 weeks. So it's not something he's incapable of doing. And we'll just have to wait and see. But you mentioned some other runners, and I wanted to bring up this slide just to kind of transition and talk a little bit about some horses that people always bring up when we talk about the Belmont. And, in the comments on Twitter, or should I say X, or, here on YouTube, people will say, well, what about Burnham Square? Well, per Ian Wilkes, he's headed to the Matt Win. Cole Battle, everybody's favorite long shot with Lonnie Briley, he's also going to the Matt Win. Final Gambit for Brad Cox, who finished 4th in the Derby. A lot of people thought, he might go to the Belmont. Well, he's going to the Matt Win as well, going a mile and a 16th. McAfee, who finished 2nd to Hill Road in the Peter Pan, going to the Ohio Derby. Now, the 2 horses you and I included here are a little bit of X factors, and that's Jeramond and Crudo. Jeramond's coming out of that race against Cornucopian. Crudo's coming out of the win in the Sir Barton on the Preakness Day undercard. You really are interested in Jeramond, so I'm going to let you talk a little bit about this one, who could be another major pace presence if he decides to go. And maybe Chad decides to send him because, hey, it ensures a little bit more pace for Hill Road too.
That's why I think is exactly that point, is why I think he's interesting. I mean, his figure last time out, he would definitely fit with the field, especially as a horse that, is probably improving and training well. I mean, he hasn't missed a beat in terms of being on the work tab since, he's been at Belmont Park. I mean, Jeramond, he ran what I think was a 96 or a 98 when he beat Cornucopian. It was something like that, either fit, going into the Belmont. Hill Road got a 94. I mean, it's not all about figures, obviously, but that horse clearly ran a fast enough race against Cornucopian that day that he would ensure some more pace in the Belmont. And I think that it could be likely that Chad sends this horse to the Belmont and ensures some more pace for Hill Road rather than sending him to a softer spot where he could just walk over the field. I mean, this horse, if he's up to the challenge, I think he could be an interesting contender in terms of the pace dynamics.
And one of the things I will say about Garamond is he is, I don't know if it's a soft G or a hard G. I always end up going with Garamond, but Garamond, however you want to say it.
I'm not
sure. Another great debate over names that we can get into. We tap at Trise, Fort. Anyway, terrible ideas. But nevertheless, Garamond, however you want to call him, he's only ever run one-turn miles. Or one-turn races. He ran the Gotham, ran third there, and then obviously against Cornucopian was a one-turn race there as well. So, but his pedigree is outstanding. His pedigree is fantastic. Uncle Mo sired out of a Tappet mare. Yeah. He should have no problem running. So even though he's not run 2 turns yet, he should have no problem getting 2 turns when he decides to do that. Crudo is another one who ran in the Sir Barton, took him gate to wire that day, won that race impressively. Now, he didn't come back with the biggest speed figure in 84, if I'm not mistaken, so he would need to really step forward. One of the things I will say about Crudo is his pedigree is also fantastic for distance, sired by Justify out of a deputy minister mare. He is the full sibling to the Japanese runner Awesome Result, who is spectacular and is a career 8 for 9 winning and has won at 1.25 miles. So can absolutely do the distance. And so I think that, those are 2 horses that either Chad or Todd maybe decides to send. Maybe they take a look, especially if the word coming out of Baffert's barn is maybe Rodriguez still isn't 100%. And then it really could get stolen up on the front end if nobody else is there. And so you have these 2 very lightly raced horses, but they both have upside potential. They both have pedigree to support 1.25 miles. They could be interesting. But, yeah.
Definitely. And Pletcher has those other 2 horses as well, Uncaged and Vassimo. I don't know what the word is on them after the Peter Pan.
I don't think they're ready for it, but I think Crudo's probably his best bet. Grande, by the way, people have asked about this. Grande is still not back on the work tab. And I know they were seeking a second opinion about his foot issue. So it might be a little bit of a layoff for that. Something just to keep in mind for him. I know that's another horse that a lot of people mention or bring up is like, oh, maybe he's because we think of Todd Pletcher for the Belmont, of course. And, something just to keep in mind. But listen, it's going to be a great race. I hope this, has helped some folks get a little bit of their arms around kind of who's running, how the race is going to be run, kind of some of the dynamics. One of the things to keep in mind is a little bit of the jockey situation. Flavian Pratt ran both Hill Road and Baeza. I'd imagine he's going to go to Baeza as his mount, and I would imagine that opens things up for Irad to take over on Hill Road in all likelihood for Chad Brown. That would make sense. Louis Saez probably stays on Gosger in that regard. So, always looking at the jockey musical chairs in these big races, but going to be a lot of fun. We got some great racing between now and then, so we're going to be continuing to cover a lot of the great racing taking place in Belmont, the Big A, and all over, maybe even a Assiniboia Downs early in the week. Who doesn't love that? So, Kaylie, this is going to be a lot of fun, but we didn't even talk about maybe the best race of the weekend, the Met Mile.
I know. It's crazy how many great races are going to take place over that weekend. Obviously, the Belmont is the headliner, but Met Mile, that it's shaping up to be, I think we keep saying this is going to be the race of the year, but like every single time, we see these probables come out, it really looks like this is going to be another one of those races of the year in terms of the Met Mile, but really excited to go out to Saratoga and, build up anticipation with you, cover all the runners in the Belmont as well as the other races. That's going to be so much fun. So
it will be. Yeah. And the Met Mile, Fierceness, White Abarrio, Just a Touch, Nisos, Raging Torrent. Even if it's just those 5 horses, that'd be great. But oh, by the way, book them. Dano might show up, Bishop's Bay, Quinn's Brew. There's a Crazy Mason. I mean, these are all graded stakes winners. It's just insane to see how good this field is going to be. So going to be a lot of fun. Listen, Kaylie, I can't wait, but we're going to sign off for now. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode on NYRA Bets YouTube. For Kaylie Shapiro, my name is Matthew DeSantis, wishing you a great and prosperous day at the races and reminding you it's now Post time.